Hello, welcome to another episode of the Akiona Law Podcast, wherein we talk about anything and everything that intersects in the areas of family law and divorce. And today I have with me a respected Canadian collaborative lawyer, conflict trainer, mediator, and innovator in her field, Jacinta Gallant. Welcome,
Hey,
Jacinta.
thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, I'm so glad you're here. For those of you who don't know Jacinta, she is welcomed as a trainer throughout Canada, the US, Australia, and Southeast Asia. She is known for her insightful approach to teaching and managing interpersonal conflict in new ways, such as how to stop talking about what we lawyers what we lawyers or other professionals think the conflict is about and what we think matters to the parties, and instead to be curious and ask good questions to help parties discover this for themselves and about what matters to them in ways that do not threaten them and have people become defensive. um,
Yeah.
Again, Jacinta, I'm so glad that you're here today. We're
Me
gonna
too.
we're gonna talk about insight mediation, and I that's how I got to know Jacinta, from taking insight mediation. I was like, what the heck is insight mediation? Because you don't hear that. You hear about shuttle mediation, facilitative mediation, insight mediation, and I was just blown away. I was completely blown away.
Mm.
Um, but tell us about your story. Tell us about your journey. How did you
Oh,
get from like trained family law divorce litigator to mediator and then now insight mediation?
yeah. Well, I mean, thanks for asking. I think so many lawyers who end up being drawn to the collaborative law or collaborative practice movement went to law school because we wanted to help people. I mean,
Right.
let's be clear on that. And so the fact that the divorce lawyer concept is so negatively portrayed in the media and in the public, it makes me sad sometimes. But I'll be honest, after my years of being a good litigation family lawyer, I realized how pointless the whole thing was, and in fact, that it was causing more harm than it was helping. I mean, I can think of a few cases where my client really needed that protective advocacy that I was able to provide. But I'm going to say, for the most part, if our clients have been given the right support to work things out and discover some things about themselves and their sort of their hopes for the future, oh my gosh, their family and their particularly their children would have been so much better off. And so I naturally leaned towards mediation even when I was a litigation lawyer on the West Coast. Actually, I was in British Columbia.
Okay.
And as I learned more mediation skills around asking, exploring, identifying the really key things that matter to parties and helping them craft solutions that will really be bespoke, that will really uniquely meet their needs and address their concerns, my God, I was so much happier. I had more fun at work. I felt more satisfied at the end of the day. I found myself able to spend my days off not planning a cross examination or thinking about the next great legal argument to win this case.
Right.
So I began certainly in the early years of motherhood to really notice what I was thinking about when I was pushing my kids on the swing or walking along the beach. And I'm just like, this is occupying far too much of my brain space to be thinking in this defensive offensive mode, which is
Right.
what a litigator is.
Yeah.
And so as I developed my skill and my practice around mediation, I I'm going to say about 20 years in thought, there's more than this. I know that the human beings that are engaged in this very challenging conflict process would be better served if we weren't nudging them towards solutions all the time. And it just so happened that when I was wondering and a little getting dissatisfied with my days in the office, I met the founder of Insight Mediation, Cheryl Picard, who was a Canadian professor in conflict studies program at Carleton University in Ottawa. And she had just retired and agreed to mentor me. I was immediately drawn to what she was describing
Okay.
by way of what's going on for humans when we're in conflict. And then the strategies and skills that she developed were immediately resonant with me for what I was seeing in the room.
Wait, and what are we like in the 2000s? What time frame
Well,
are we?
actually, we're at 2016
Oh, okay.
before I met Cheryl Picard. And prior to that, I was really doing a lot of training in the model that most people in North America, and I'm going to say around the world, are
Mhm.
trained in as mediators or as negotiators. And that's the model, that's the interest-based approach.
Interspace.
Yeah, I mean, so it's an effective problem-solving model,
Can I
but
pause you right there for like, because you know,
yeah,
for the people who aren't like attorneys, who are
yeah.
just regular normal people going through divorce and trying to figure things out, can you explain what is interest-based mediation?
Well, yeah, I can. And one way to think about it is um, when people are shocked or upset or worried or
Right.
all those things that happen when a big life change comes about, we often then come up with our list of what we think would be the best outcome, and we describe it in a way that somehow is interpreted by the other spouse as a demand,
Right.
right?
Right.
I have an idea. Why don't we do this? And the other person's like, we're not doing that. And so you've got this, honestly, you're nodding because
Yeah.
everyone sees this happen. It's like a classic argument over the thing. And so
The
what
thing.
was a great advance from people just arguing over the thing as if it was, about the cottage or the car or the schedule. Most often, if they were given an opportunity to really, in a relaxed fashion, talk about their goals, their concerns, their needs, their fears, and their values,
Wait,
suddenly it's not so much about
let's
the demand, it's about what are the things that I need in order to feel whole here.
their goals, their fears, their needs, and their values. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And my brain jumps all over the place all the
Mine
time.
does too, so this is great.
I know that you're no, because like I'm just like in my head, I'm like, okay, so your typical example is this, right? Like, well, I need the house. I need
Yeah,
this house because we bought this house together and we're creating generational wealth for our kids. So we
yeah,
can't get rid of this house. Like
yeah.
in my head, like that's a need.
Yeah, and guess
Okay.
what? The
What?
way you've just described it, you expressed your need, which I'm interpreting as a demand,
Yes.
and then you've given me all your justifications. You've tried to persuade me that I should get the house, and this is why. Exhibit A, Exhibit B, Exhibit C. So as lawyers, we do that anyway. I mean, that's our natural way to convince someone to see things in the light that our client wants them to see them. But when you're the human being who's separating, and you have to have a really important conversation about where people live, how the kids are going to adjust to the separation, your worries about the future, both economically, even emotionally, practically. When we can help clients, or clients can help themselves, talk more about those concerns, needs, fears, hopes, and
Concerns.
really the values that are motivating their behavior, well, you're going to find 15 or 20 different ways to manage housing, the kids being comfortable in two homes, managing the financial sort of impact of whatever happens. And even the early models of mediation would encourage us to help people explore their position or their demand, the
Mhm.
house, in a way that might expand the notion of what's possible. Maybe it doesn't have to be this house. Maybe it's a house in this neighborhood, right? But it's all very much moving people towards finding a solution to the problem called, what do we do with the house?
Okay.
So stay with me for a minute on that, because if if having a discussion about what to do about the house was
Right.
all that we needed to do,
Okay.
the model, the interest-based model, would work in that I would say, well, here are my needs and here are your needs, and I'm concerned about this and you're concerned about that. I'm hoping for this. And so the challenge that we have is when people are feeling calm and centered and supported and grounded, they are often fully capable of having those kinds of conversations. And so what happens is, in most cases where people are, have some kind of interpersonal relationship, and in our cases, an intimate relationship.
Yes.
you have a huge amount of emotions that are fueling defensiveness, that are urging me to justify and persuade, and you owe me, and I sacrificed, and everything, the language of the negotiation, shall I call it, is more about justification, which just we know now from
Right.
neuroscience, the minute I try to justify something to you, you're going to get defensive.
Right.
So it just doesn't work. I mean, if it worked in every case, well, you and I wouldn't have jobs. Like, people would be able to do this.
True.
So what happens is the models that we've been using, while far better than litigation or like positional bargaining, didn't make room for the very real human emotion that's leading to people to behave in defensive ways. So what Insight's done is it's begun to look at what's going on when people are in conflict in a way that actually makes sense to what I can just tell by your nodding. What we observe when we see people in conflict is a classic argument. I mean, I'm saying this, you're saying that, I'm not listening, you're not listening.
Exactly.
No one wins an argument if
Yeah.
your intention is to try and help the other person see your perspective.
Well, and people are flooding too, so they're
Oh,
not
that
listening
too.
either.
So yeah, you've got people who won't listen because they're pissed off and being defensive. You've got people who can't listen
Because they're flooded.
because they're flooded.
Yeah.
And so what our best effort at a mediation or collaboration model did, using the interest-based approach, was trying to help people at least expand the notion of what's possible. It's just that it never really addressed the natural human response to a perception of threat. What leads me to be defensive might be my interpretation of something.
Yeah.
It could be accurate, it could be not accurate. And my sense that something that matters to me is feeling threatened, and I'm going to defend.
Yes. Yes.
So that's the part that Insight brings, is saying, oh,
okay.
we can think of moments, and I'm sure people who are listening to this outside of our profession can think of a time where they had a tough decision to make and they were at odds with the other person, but they were able to talk it through and eventually like sort it out. Pause for a moment, and that happens.
Okay.
When people are feeling ready to have a conversation and hear each other's perspectives, they can often expand the notion of what's possible and come to good decisions. So we just have to remember that that does happen.
But
And what's absent is defensiveness. So the minute people are defending or advocating for their
Yes.
position, which is another way of defending, the other person will naturally be like drawn in to react in a defensive way. Right? Like if something's at stake that really matters to me,
Mhm.
and if I interpret you to be the person that's in the way of what I want to get, we're automatically risking any dialogue by defensiveness. I mean, it's just, think of the neuroscience that we now know because we've been able to watch brains for more than 20 years, right? Stuff we didn't
Okay.
know before. That if I'm experiencing you or this situation to threaten something that matters to me, it could be at the values level, or it could be that there's a grizzly bear coming down the path and it actually is a threat. But as soon as I see that threat, I'm shifting my brain into fight, flight, freeze, fawn, right? So
Right.
I'm actually cognitively not able to be expansive and open. I'm going to be shutting down so that I can focus on this threat.
Right.
And as long as I'm focused on that threat, I can't learn anything new anyway. And I'm not open to hearing your perspective. So our model, you've described different ways, shuttle mediation, we've got collaboration, we've got all kinds of models for how we can help people to reach agreement. And most of it doesn't work until people are no longer defending.
I see. And just for people out there, shuttle mediation is what the mediator goes, the parties are in separate rooms, and mediators go back and forth, and it's interest-based negotiation. And that,
Yeah, like honestly, I think shuttle mediation isn't
oh,
really mediation, it's assisted negotiation. I have a strong feeling on that. To me, mediation occurs when both parties are in the room, when it's safe and comfortable to do that, so virtual room or in person, and they're invited to participate in their own decision making, not by some shuttle person that goes back and forth. So I'm going to just say for the people listening, I feel strongly that we need a different word for situations where the people who are going to be living with the outcome are not even in the room together hearing each other. That's just something else. That's assisted negotiation.
that's assisted. And unfortunately, that is traditionally the motto in family law and divorce, where the mediator goes back and forth and you're doing a 9-10 hour mediation session and you're just done at the end of the day. People are
Yeah,
tired.
well, that's not
Yeah.
that to me is inhumane. It is not client-centered. It is not consensual. Most clients will not consent to that. They'll feel stuck by it, or they might feel pressured to do it. We just need a different word for it. And I'll tell you this, in many places in the United States, that is how they imagine mediation happening in family law.
Yeah.
But in Canada, if you're trained as a family mediator, you're trained in a facilitative way. Most of us would never, we would see shuttle as like only if necessary.
Oh,
Truly. Yeah,
wow.
absolutely.
That's a
Yeah.
go-to here.
Yeah, so it may be no surprise that
Washington.
insight mediation grew out of Canada. And it isn't just Washington, it's actually many, many places. And so I don't want to pretend that in Canada they don't have long full day mediations and all of
Okay.
that. But the
Okay.
way we're trained would be very much more facilitative
Okay.
as a default. That would be the way that we're trained.
Well, so let's talk about what is insight mediation then?
Yeah, well, it would be,
Like, how
it
do we,
definitely, it is engaging
okay,
let's call them the clients,
okay.
engaging the clients in a process where they discover their own needs, concerns, fears, hopes, values in a way that invites them to be themselves. They don't have to come and show up and be someone else. In fact, we want the clients to be truly who they are now, and with a focus on the future for sure. But we need to make room for the stories that have led them to where they're at.
Mm,
So the stories that lead me to make assumptions about everything that you say. When you say the when you talk about how great our vacations were every summer, I'm thinking about, what are you talking about? In my mind, I'm like, they weren't that great. I did all the work, and you usually just showed up at the end of the day for dinner. Do
you
you
came
see what I mean?
along for the
Like,
ride.
we've got story every time we've got people who are ending an intimate relationship, there's going to be all kinds of assumptions that are filtering everything that they come to understand from one another. And so the insight mediation approach is to look at each client's experience and how they're expressing it, and understand it in a way that
Mm,
where there can be a dropping of assumptions. So we spend a lot of time in clearing up misinterpretations. So rather than have a mediator go from one room to
yeah.
another room, shuttling, imagine it's like the telephone game. The message gets lost in the transmission. Insight mediation wants the clients to have direct discussions about the important things that matter, and they will always, almost always, default into assumptions that lead people to get defensive. So we work with the defensiveness. Our focus is on trying to help the clients relax and open up, but
Mm.
not by prying it out of them, but by trying to understand what is it that's feeling threatened that matters so much.
And how do we do that? How do we get there?
Well, we ask more questions. So in an insight mediation, you would always have a meeting with each client individually, so that I would have a really good sense of who Jane is, and what it is that she's most concerned about, and the things that are leading her to like lose sleep at night, what she's most worried about. But also, because I have an individual relationship with her, what does she hope for the future? or what are the values that she wants to really see guiding her decision making? So that I can have the same conversation with Joe. And so in that way, an insight mediator has enough background about each of the clients to be able to be supportive of both of them. So that's a really fundamental feature of not just insight mediation, but it really doesn't fit the theory to expect the two people who are in conflict right now, that the first time they meet the mediator is when they're both in the room. That
Right.
just wouldn't, it would be unheard of. Because how else can you manage to calm people down by using insight skills like curiosity, like showing a truly sincere desire to understand you in all of your complexities without the pressure of feeling how you're going to be performing in front of the person that you're now in conflict with.
Right.
So we start there.
Well, so how do we get to the values of each individual?
Yeah, well, that's always been really hard.
Yeah.
It's been really hard to, I've often heard people say you can't negotiate values, so don't talk about them, because of course our values are intrinsically about who we are, what we care about, what motivates us to make decisions. So I developed an exercise that was inspired by a therapist out of New York, where my clients are invited to do a card sort. So you take a big set of cards, a deck of cards that have on them all kinds of values, but also things that you value. So there's like integrity, honesty, but also family vacation, cooking meals. Do you see? So it's this really mixed bag of the things that I value and my intrinsic values. So we do a card sort, and because clients get to do this on their own time, right? They're doing it privately on their own. They're able to sift and sort through the more important and the less important values, and then narrow to, 4 or 6 that are really showing up for them now.
Okay.
And when they can reveal their values, first of all, to themselves, right? It's a real learning experience for you as on your own, but also to be able to share your values with your soon to be ex in a way that isn't threatening is what the insight mediator facilitates. So it's not a competition of your values and my values. It's what was it like to even do that exercise would be an insight question. Instead of going straight to what are your 4 core values, which is really, I'm looking for information.
Okay.
So we're always asking questions that are less threatening because they're getting at what was your experience of doing that? And then you'll hear this conversation. Well, it was hard.
Yeah.
I found myself, and then people will tell a story. I found myself thinking about my high school teacher. Like they'll tell a story attached to the value. And then they're able to reveal, well, and when I picked this value, this is what it means. So when I do this with the couple, when they're both in the room together, it's less threatening because they've already done it on their own. It's not like there's no competition. They've already explored it a bit with me, so that they've got a language now to explain how they came to arrive at this being their core values for now. And when it comes up in a joint meeting, it's amazing how it diffuses.
Really?
Wow. It just diffuses, because when we hear people's stories, we pay attention. And so I can't I can't think of an example where this didn't happen, but I could imagine someone saying, well, this is what happened for me. And I realized that I haven't been living these values because you're such a jerk. Do you see what I mean? Like you could see, but I've never seen it weaponized.
Never seen it weaponized?
Because it's not these are not challenging things. These are like, who are you? How do you show up? And insight invites you, the parties, the clients, to be yourself. So we don't have to mask and pretend it's future focused and we're all ready for a great solution, win-win. We're actually able to be who are you as the human being on this day, in this moment. And insight mediators are very, very present to what's going on for these human beings in this moment. It's so much easier than the problem solving method when people are resisting, and then they're often solving their own problems. oh, I never thought of it that way. Or that's a really good question. I have to think about that. I can give you an example. I'll give you an example of the
Okay.
difference in the way you can ask a question. I could say, hey, what did you have for breakfast? Where does your mind go when I say, what did you have for breakfast?
I think to I had my coffee with
Yeah,
collagen powder and some
yeah,
joint powder.
right. So you have an answer.
Right.
Okay, so I'm like, what do oh, okay, I had granola. Like, how boring, isn't this boring? Like,
Yeah,
it's so
yeah.
boring. But when we often ask questions of clients that we're just trying to get information or we're trying to nudge them forward, they often don't have complex, like, deep answers because, well, I had granola. So what if I say, what is your favorite thing about the whole breakfast period? That time of day. Well, what does your mind have to do then?
I feel like it has to think a lot more. Like, what's
Yeah,
important to me? What's
yeah,
the value?
yeah. So I'm going to say
Yeah.
that it's really, insight teaches us to ask better questions.
Oh,
Like, we
duh.
want to
Right.
ask better questions
Right.
because our questions can be so narrowly focused on outcome. We think we have
Right.
a job to do, and yes, clients want the outcome. Oh my God, clients who are listening or people who, we know you want an outcome. It's just that the thing that gets in the way of getting to that outcome is the human behavior that is so authentically and understandably defensive.
Yes.
Right? So as long as I'm defending, the neuroscience says, as long as I'm defending, I'm not listening.
So
I'm not
true.
open to learning anything new. I can't explore new possibilities.
Right.
And
Right.
if we were taught that 20 years ago, we would have saved so much time trying to make things happen when people aren't ready.
So true. And I've done Jacinta's value card sorting, and I totally can grasp what you're saying because I had to sort, and you had us narrow down, and it was hard to get to those last 5 or 4 cards. I
Yeah.
can't remember, but it's even like I really had to stop and think, what is my value at this present moment? And I can just think if I was going through a divorce and I was there with my spouse, and instead of, starting it off, well, she wants to keep the house, and, what do you want, to just come in with like, okay, so Lonnie, why did you pick those 4 values? Tell us about it. How was
Yeah.
that experience like?
Yeah.
Just so much more. It immediately removes the defensiveness. Well, I picked, inner peace. I picked I don't know what else. What I'm trying to think of where are my value cards? Inner
But
peace,
But your
autonomy.
experience of doing the exercise
Yeah.
led you to discover something about yourself. And
True.
that is the power of insight, is that, so insight mediation is grounded in learning theory. Okay. So sorry for those of you who aren't interested in the theory, but know that the reason we're so great, I'm going to say great at asking questions that connect the heart and the mind, like we want people to be connecting, is that everything we're doing is trying to open up pathways to learning. So when I ask a question that's just asked and answered, what'd you have for breakfast? Granola.
Right. Right.
There's no learning going on. It's not even, there's nothing, whatever. But when I ask questions that get at your values
Yeah.
or get at what you value, remember, like, I love breakfast because of this, or I actually hate breakfast because I'm not a morning person. Do you see? But you're going to
Right.
have people that can respond to the question. They have to think more, but they have to engage also in their heart and mind. So I sometimes hear people worried that people who are going through a divorce aren't ready to have this kind of conversation because they're still feeling so raw or hurt or this and or that.
Right.
And what bothers me about it is this. Um, so that is the case for most couples. It's not easy. Some it's easier for sure. So does a problem solving model that nudges them forward all the time and that sort of contains the conflict and says we're just not going to talk about values and we're not going to go there, I just need to challenge our colleagues and say, well, how is that better? I just
Yeah,
need to
how is that
understand how it's better. I
when
don't
it's
know.
raw and you're pushing someone who's just so raw and hurt and angry, you're pushing them, problem solve, problem solve. What are your needs? What are your interests? How can we get there? No, it's almost in my head. I'm thinking that's the wrong thing.
Well, it's why I hear so many people saying, oh my God, why didn't we know this? I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
but we know it now. So what I say is the first thing you learn as an insight mediator is you learn to notice defending behaviors. So you notice behaviors that send the signal now to me as the mediator, this person's defending. Okay, so justifying, persuading, leaning in, raised tones,
Right.
aggressive positioning,
Okay.
but also withdrawing, leaving, not responding. Do you see?
Right.
So I'm going to say that that's a signal to me as the mediator. There's defending going on,
Right.
and I stop there, and
Yeah.
I wonder. Too often we see these behaviors and we think, oh, I know what's going on. Oh, it's probably this. Or I guess they just need to move to the next agenda item. Do you
Right.
see? And the thing is, they might go along with it, but in the end, they'll have the fight in the parking lot or,
Yeah.
at the soccer field, or
Right.
it isn't sustainable, though you might achieve something. So the neuroscience tells us this: when you feel and experience me to really want to understand you, you can't help yourself. You calm. You experience satisfaction, security, and tension relief.
Right.
If you experience me to really want to understand you, you will experience those three positive emotions. If you experience me to try and push you or reassure, oh, don't worry, everything will be fine. How often have you been met with that? Like, you obviously don't know how hard this is for me,
Hmm.
right? All these things that we do that are about like trying to tell someone, guide them, advise them, nudge them, move them, shift them. If people are feeling vulnerable and threatened, they cannot help but resist and defend. So insights questions, it's not just asking. There's a whole framework of how you acknowledge, how you summarize, how you do all of the skills that any mediator needs to do, is focused on helping each person achieve that sense of calm that comes from feeling like someone really wants to understand you. So we have got to stay with the person who's exhibiting the defending behaviors and try and help them understand both themselves and help us understand the behavior. So
So
we have to notice and wonder and not assume we know what's going on.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Can we role play just to kind of give like
Yeah.
an example? Okay, so we'll go back to that example of the house, right? Because that's always a big hot topic in any divorce. So let's pretend, let's pretend I'm the person that wants a house. So you're the mediator. I have my pretend husband over here, and I'm saying, well, yeah, I want our family home because, it's going to create generational wealth for our kids. And that's
Yeah.
important to me. It's important for me to pass our home down, to create generational wealth so our kids don't have to struggle.
Yeah. So just as a sidebar, so as the mediator, I'd be noticing how your spouse is reacting, by the way. It's a big part of being in the room together. And I might ask a question like, Lani, what are you worried will happen if you're not able to keep the house?
So if we're not able to keep the house, then our kids lose. We don't have this ability to pass this huge equity to our kids and create generational wealth.
Okay, so one of the things that's really concerning you right now is how you will ensure that your kids have something for
Yeah.
their own future, like some financial legacy or financial support.
Yeah, because I don't want them to struggle like how we did. I want to set them
Yeah.
up.
Yeah. Okay, so you and Joe have really struggled with this decision. Then I'd look at Joe and it seems like you've really been unable to have a productive discussion about this.
Right, because Joe
Yep.
wants to sell the house and
Yeah.
I don't want to. I want to leave something to our kids.
Yep. So what I want to invite you to think about right now, okay, is if you can have a productive discussion about this today with my help, what are you hoping will be better in your life or for your family?
Well, what I'm hoping that would be better for our family is just to kind of just have set them up with some sort of financial security.
And if you were able to to be sure that whatever agreement you and Joe reach did satisfy the kids' needs for financial security, how would that help?
How would it help if we set up an agreement to ensure our kids' financial security? I guess it would give peace of mind knowing that
Yeah,
the kids would be okay.
yeah. So this is really something that in some ways has been keeping you up at night.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
making me worry.
So one of the things that, and so then I would ask Joe, I might ask Joe the same question, and Alex. So the whole idea is that all I wanted to do, Lonnie, I
Yeah.
didn't want to knock you off your position and make you not want the house.
Okay.
All I wanted to do was understand how would a productive discussion that you and Joe have not been able to have yet,
Right.
how
Because we're
would that
stuck.
help your life? And so in the end, when you say peace of mind, we could have explored that further. But
Okay.
Joe's now hearing that this is something that's keeping you up at night. He's not hearing, Joe, you suck because you didn't agree.
Ah, I see. I see.
And so each piece of what I do as an insight mediator is responsive to what's going on now, like with you, but also noticing what's going on with the other person who's in the room.
Mm.
Because
Wow.
if I notice that Joe's suddenly listening to you when you say peace of mind, I'm going to go in a different direction. There's no prescription here. The only, there's no formula, there's only a strategy. And the strategy is, how can I help Lonnie and Joe hear and understand one another? So I'm going to ask questions that will help you reveal more things both to yourself, right? I wanted you to do some thinking.
Yeah, which I
And
was.
then I'm gonna be noticing, how is it resonating with him?
Hmm.
And suddenly we're not talking about the house, we're talking about peace of mind and legacy for kids. But I didn't manipulate you into that, which is what we used to do. Like in the problem solving model, we'd be like, okay, how can we do this, 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 and this? When you're still angry with one another because you didn't have a productive discussion about it.
Very angry,
There's still a
lots of
lot of hurt.
anger. Yeah. When
Yeah.
how does this okay, so I've got over here, and I'm reaching behind me to grab, we've got two workbooks here. Okay, so I've got
Yep.
our like tell us about this. I've got our family in two homes. What is that?
So when I became an insight practitioner, I studied for a year with Cheryl Picard, and I'm like, I suddenly came back to the office and thought, I want, I know clients aren't prepared for this kind of dialogue in
Right.
my existing model. They're not. I would have to spend far more time with each of them. Really, I'm going to say in my old view would be coaching them to be more effective communicators.
Okay.
You see, like, so I was all over that. I thought, oh, I needed to do that. And then when I studied insight, I'm like, no, I just need to ask better questions and have clients able to reflect when they're not with me. So I created the Our Family in Two Homes workbook, which is full of reflection questions that are really engaging. They engage clients in their own self-discovery at home with a cup of tea or bottle of wine, whatever it is, on their own time, so that when they do begin to participate in work with me or with you or with mediation, collaboration, whatever it is that they need, they've spent some time doing the values card sort,
The okay.
reflecting on where they're at with trust. So we break it down into workable parts. Inviting them to talk about, discover for themselves, how do they behave when emotions are strong and conflict seems to be rising up? Do you run? Do you lean in and fight? Um, we invite people to explore who they are. Are you someone who thinks out loud and is very, very active socially? Are you someone who prefers to think in your mind before you put it out there? You're more introverted.
Mm.
So we have people exploring who they are, how they show up. There's questions in there about hopes, and there's questions in there about fears. And there's questions in there about, how do I make decisions? I use this I used this exercise with a couple yesterday who were
Okay.
clashing about a decision. And I said, let's turn to page 8. And there's a question here about what's your preferred way of deciding? Analytical, intuitive, consulting, exclusive, delegation, collaborate. I forget the fifth one. So it's often a reflection that couples can do on their own because they understand where they've struggled with decision making. I'm going to plug in my Mac. I don't know why it's not. It won't be beautiful if this whole thing stops. And so it turned out that they're just different. He is intuitive. He decides with his gut. She's more analytical. She does all the research.
Oh.
And she's frustrated that he doesn't look at the research, and he's frustrated that she demands that he looks at it when the answer is obvious to him. So they went from being mad at one another and thinking each other sucks to going,
Right.
oh, we're different. And I said, and you're also different. One of you is more extroverted and one of you is more introverted. So even the way you engage in discussions around decisions would be different. Have you noticed that at home? And they're like, yeah. So what the workbook did was take everything I was learning about asking curious questions, but also that learning theory. It's grounded in a the value of discovering something for yourself. Then it's powerfully transformative. So people do say, wow, when I did the values cards work, gosh, I realized if I'd done this 5 years ago, I might have chosen differently.
Right.
Now I'm really clear. And so that's the part that I'm excited about. I did it because I wanted clients to have a better experience. I started using it with my clients, and now it's around the world. And I'm really appreciative that people like you are going to start using it with your clients.
Well, and just in terms of, so again, I have Our Family Two Homes workbooks, and that's the one with kids. So let's say I'm a client, I'm coming to you to do mediation.
I'm disappearing because I got to plug in again. I don't know what happened.
Okay. We're going to
keep
be
going
right back, folks. So we're going to take okay, so you're back. Okay.
Okay,
so
you want to start over?
Okay, so I'm a client, I'm your client for Insight Mediation. I'm coming to you and you're like, okay, so hey, Lani, before you and Joe even meet with me, you and Joe are going to do the workbook pages, what, 1 through 10?
1 to 30. The first 13 pages are all reflection. Yeah.
First 13 pages. So me and Joe have homework to do ourselves.
Separately, not together.
Separately before we even meet with you.
Yeah.
And that homework, I'm looking at it right now. So again, it's a card sort. You've got stuff about asking yourself, example, what am I most concerned about as I begin this process? So that's a question. Then we've got communication. What is getting in the way of healthy communication as we approach decisions about our separation? And it's just these such amazing just questions. So me and Joe come together, we do the 13 pages, we meet with you, and then I'm confused about, okay, then what happens next?
Yeah. Well, remember, okay, so with Insight Mediation, it's all about helping you and Joe have a productive discussion to make agreement and make decisions. Okay. So what happens is you're already shifting a little bit in your own perspective of you. What I love about it is it invites you to look at freaking you. You are the one that will live the rest of your life, and you're not going to be with Joe anymore. So it invites you. So I'll say very clearly to clients, this is your private journal. This is your discovery tool. Knock yourself out and see what resonates with you.
Okay.
So when I meet with each client individually, I'll ask something as open as, hey, what was it like to do those exercises? And then you launch into whatever it is that resonated for you, so that it's totally guided by what interested you. Some people went crazy with the trust page because it's such a big thing. Other people are looking at introvert, extrovert, and conflict style. Other people are like, have written a paragraph for each of the questions in the first couple of pages. Everybody's different. And what I have learned is how many assumptions I made about clients and how similar they were before I was able to really have them explore, because none of us, unless you've studied communication and conflict resolution, you don't come to your first meeting with your lawyer or mediator knowing what your conflict style is, where you're at with trust, what your value. I mean, it isn't what people do. So what I did was, I'm like, that affects so much about decision making.
Yeah.
So what happens is we can clear up these misinterpretations using the tools that are in there, because as you carry on through the workbook, there's questions about parenting, and then there's questions about financial decision making, and then there's information about child support and spousal support and property, but it's all articulated in a way that makes the client the center, right? They get to decide what is it that they want. And when people are asked that, they tend to be less positional because they assume they have to convince me. But when I'm like, who are you? How do you show up? What are you worried about? What are you hoping for? What are your values? They're already like, you mean you can have, yeah. Like, let's help find a way for you two to make decisions and reach agreement that meets these needs. Some of them are the same, some of them are different, addresses these concerns, gives you the best chance to get what you hope for, and is in alignment with these values that you want to have guiding your decision making. They don't have to be the same. But we often, our other model, and without this kind of a client preparation tool, people aren't ready for those conversations. And it's no wonder our colleagues, as much as we care about the work that we do, can sometimes feel very frustrated in the level or the superficiality of the dialogue when we're just talking about trading assets and dealing with money.
So I have a question. So I'm looking at page 11 and I've got your Our Family in Two Homes workbook, which again is for couples that have children. So page 11 talks about communication and conflict styles. Our couple pattern. When I need to talk about difficult things with my former partner, I tend to behave like, and you fill it in. I interpret my former partner's behavior as, we fill it in. And so what I'm filling in about communication conflict styles, is that just for me, or am I going to talk about it with you?
Yeah, you've given me a great opportunity to introduce one more piece about insight. All right. So that primes the pump for you to begin to think, how do I interpret? So my behavior is this. How is it often interpreted? Because there's another question. How does your former partner interpret your behavior? So it's truly just priming the pump for what are the things that tend to lead to polarization or debates or arguments where you're able to go, I wonder, is that what I meant? Is that what she meant? And so that is setting up for the insight approach to say, what are you understanding from what she's saying right now? Instead of what did she say? Because if I just parrot back the words that you used, it doesn't mean I understood your meaning. So we're always also asking people, what do you mean when you say? Okay. And that's just a page that primes people for thinking, oh, there's a difference between behavior and how behavior is interpreted without being all preachy teachy about it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. No, I think this, and then we've got also our Family in a Few Homes workbook.
Yeah.
What is this workbook for?
That's for families whose children are already grown. And they might even be just like grown, meaning they're actually adults in college or university. But it was really inspired by the work that Carol Hughes and Bruce Fredenberg out of California did, really looking at the impact of divorce on adult children and understanding that there's an entire population of wounded adult children of divorce. So because Carol was early on part of my insight journey and also with the Our Family in Two Homes workbook, I said, I want to create one for couples who think, oh, well, at least the kids are grown. And so this one just invites the same couple in mediation to also explore the important relationships that they want to sustain, because they're probably going to have some, but also helps them have the same kind of engaging dialogue that they might not bother to have if they think, oh, well, at least we're not having to raise the children anymore. So it really, I found that some of our sort of more mature clients who have adult children, they really appreciate that we're spending time helping them figure out their own future and how they might interact at milestone events, or what they might do to, what their values are around supporting adult children who, drop out of college. I don't know, but it's really interesting. There's still so much engagement when people have adult children, if they choose to engage, and this helps them have that same kind of productive dialogue. So we use it with every client of ours gets one of the workbooks.
Is there a workbook for people who don't have kids?
Not yet, and there's been many requests for it, and I'll tell you, it's more that I just haven't had time to create one, but it would be, or even adding pets into it. The whole thing is, many of those pages simply prime the pump for discussion. And so as more and more couples who don't have children together express a real desire to have a meaningful separation process that isn't just transactional and cutting the deal, most of us are just using our family in a few homes and just apologizing that, you can ignore the parts that mention kids.
Parts that mention kids.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's just been quite a journey because we did create a workbook called Designing Our Future Together for couples who are planning their future. And I had my first consult with a couple yesterday. Boy, did they love the workbook.
And say that workbook again is said what?
Designing Our Future Together.
Designing our future together. Designing our future together.
Yeah. So
And
it's the
that's for
same kind of
couples.
exercises, only pitched towards a couple that are planning to be together.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Amazing. Amazing.
I know we had so many clients using our family in 2 homes and a few homes that said, wow, if we had done this workbook, 5 years ago, we might not have broken up. We
And-
decided, well, let's make one for people who want to stay together.
And see, folks, listeners, this is why Jacinta is an innovator, because she created these workbooks.
Yeah,
She
I
created
did.
these. It came out of her brain. It is amazing.
But I
Jacinta,
never would have created this kind of a workbook that's really engaging if I hadn't studied insight. I'm not kidding. I would have been such a know-it-all. I would have been preachy teachy, and it would stay on someone's shelf.
I'm so thankful that you created these workbooks to take what you learned from insight mediation and really apply it, especially for us as professionals, to really help people navigate what is the most difficult time in their lives.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we care so much. This is one way of expressing that care, because I can tell you that my clients really feel respected and supported, because I'm like, this is for you, man. And when I say man, our clients, male, female, whatever gender, they're all at different levels of emotional sharing. They're all appreciative of that gift. That is, hey, I want to help you be most prepared for the work that you're going to do with me or with our team or with whatever it is. And all ages, I can think of so many examples, all ages. It just really helps them ground themselves.
I have a question. So now that you're using, that this is the method and using the workbook, do you find that the mediation sessions are taking a lot shorter to get resolved? Like instead of taking maybe 5 or maybe 10 sessions, you're getting it done in 5.
Without exception, in collaboration and in mediation. Partly it's because I know so much more about the clients and they've discovered so much more about themselves individually, that even if it's too early in their process to get to that sort of, that lovely sense of, okay, well, we're doing this, right? I'm able to be more productive in managing their disagreements or conflicts because I know so much more about them and they've discovered things about themselves and their pattern. So I'm just more productive. I know we save at least one joint session. And we go further faster without it feeling like a nudge or a push. I can say that with absolute experience and authority.
So how many sessions are we talking about?
Well, I'm going to just say this, of course, every family lawyer says it depends.
It depends.
You've got moderate conflict, moderate complexity, probably 4 sessions.
What about high conflict, high complexity?
For conflict, what happens for me is that we turn it into a different kind of mediation when one or both of the parties truly can't gain insight. Okay, so if you've got someone who really is never going to be able to shift out of defend and argue, then I used to waste my time still trying to get them to problem solve. And now what I'll do is I'll either build a collaborative team so that I'm the mediator and the collaborative team begins to engage, or I begin to use more individual, I guess you'd call it shuttle, but I would just not bring them into the room as much. Now that is rare, but I've recently just had that experience.
So that's rare.
We're build a team for a few different reasons. And so in the end, they do have their agreement on the parenting piece only. And it's done, but they don't love each other. Like it wasn't pretty. So I do want to say that I use insight with everything, including decisions around noticing behaviors, right? Defending high conflict behaviors.
Right.
I'll notice if the pattern doesn't shift.
Okay.
If the pattern doesn't shift, it may be that someone isn't well enough to shift.
Oh,
But equally, we'll often see people with high conflict behaviors. They behave in these ways. If they can gain insights, then you know that they're actually just someone who's really reacting to something really difficult. They're not high conflict people. And you'll notice that their shifts allow them to participate.
wow. So
I
just
know.
so if I'm a client and I'm like, how do I hire an insight mediator? How do I do this? How do they do it? How do they
Oh,
where do
wow.
they
I can't
go?
wait. I can't wait till we have like a global list, because I'm going to say that certainly in Washington state, there's 6 of you and soon to be more as you
Right.
embark on this. But I'll say this, one way to identify uh, divorce professionals who want to work with tools that will allow clients to discover and learn and be supported on their own would be look for people who are using Our Family in Two Homes,
Okay.
right? Like that, like someone who's carved out a practice that wants to provide this support to clients will know insight. It's because people who don't know insight don't see the value in helping clients discover stuff, because we don't understand that that's valuable. People who know insight go like, anything I can do to help this client discover something and support them in that way, that's just going to be a different experience because of that.
And Jacinta, for those professionals out there who are say, how sign me up? How to become
Oh, yeah.
an insight mediator? How do they sign up? Where do
Yeah.
they
Okay. Well, in fact, I'm excited because we're finally going to have a single website with all the things that I do instead of having 5. I mean, we'll still have a bunch of websites, but the one website is jacintagallant.ca, and it will list all the trainings that I'm giving, including starting in September 18th in here, and September 19th down under. It's timed for Australia, New Zealand as well. It's the next Curious Mediator course, which is the Insight Mediation training. This one's 10 consecutive weeks. And what you're also joining is a community of insight practitioners who are super keen to keep learning. I mean, it's the lifelong learning part of insight that kept me going, kept me feeling satisfied going to work. And that's what I really want to bring to our community, because many of us are getting tired.
Okay. So Jacinta Gallant .ca, or if they Google the Curious Mediator, then the training.
Yeah.
Okay.
Google my name and you'll find it, or yeah, put me
Yeah.
in the show notes. But this next Curious Mediator, I mean, this is the first time we're offering it twice in 1 year, and we're already half full. So sign up, folks.
Sign up. It's September. It's starting.
It's starting September 18th.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm so excited.
I'm excited for
Um,
you.
Before Jacinta, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your thoughts about insight mediation. And thank you again for the Our Family in Two Homes and Our Family in a Few Home workbooks that you created.
Yeah.
And also that newest workbook for people that are getting married. It's called, again, Our Family,
No, it's called Designing Our Future Together.
Designing Our Future Together. And Jacinta, again, thank you so much for your time on coming on today and talking about this new, exciting, and innovative way for people to resolve their interpersonal conflict, and
Oh, yeah.
a lot more long lasting and durable too than traditional mediation. Uh,
Thanks. I really appreciate your enthusiasm for it.
what
It's really special.
and any last words that you want to say about like insight mediation or Our Family in Two Homes that we didn't already cover?
Well, only that if you're wondering why people would bother to engage in something like this, I can just say that they do. When people are going through a rough time and you offer them a support that is engaging, they do it. Rather than a telling self-help book, they might not do it because it feels like they have to change who they are. This is about be who you are, discover it, and be better, so we can really respect the client's autonomy and their own agency so that they can really design their future separate or together in a way that will really resonate for them.
Yeah, I love that. I personally, if I were going through divorce, I would want that type of support
Yeah,
and be able to
I
kind
think
of
that's the future.
figure this out myself. What is, before we sign off, I like to end with like a fun fact. What's a fun fact that someone does not know about you just from looking at you or Wouldn't know.
Oh, okay. Well, I have to quickly say I'm the fifth of six kids, born in 5.5 years. And when I was a baby, I had four older brothers, and everyone was under the age of 3. So I come to peacemaking very naturally. I do.
Oh my gosh, 4 older brothers?
Yeah. And a young, luckily, they had mom and dad stayed on and had one more. So I have a sister.
Oh, okay, and you said what was that, like, one after the other?
Yeah, like they were twins, and then like every year. So we have this big family, and we all had kids at the same time. So all of our kids are the same ages, and so it's interesting for me that I'm still married to the guy that I met when I was 21. So
Wow.
yeah, and
Well,
divorce is my day job.
oh my goodness, that's amazing. Well, so how long have you and your husband been married then?
Like 34 years.
34
My
years? Wow.
anniversary is next week. I don't even know.
Your anniversary's next week.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Oh, well,
So
happy
yeah.
anniversary.
Thanks a lot. I love believing in love
Yeah.
and supporting the fact that people, when they separate, they still have to exist in a world where they need to have some love.
Well, again, thank you so much, Jacinta, for coming on the Akiona Law Podcast today. And again, you can find her at jacintagallant.ca, and we will have the information up on our show notes and on YouTube. And for those of you, again, thank you for listening to another episode of Akiona Law Podcast, wherein we talk about anything and everything that intersects in the areas of family law and divorce. And I'm Lani Akiona. Until then, be well. The information in this podcast is general advice only and should not in any respect be relied on as specific legal advice.